I know this isn't going to be like my other videos. My other videos are usually quite lighthearted and meant to be watched and enjoyed and fun. Hopefully a little bit of education in them, but this one is going to be pretty serious because I need to talk about an epidemic that is sweeping the nation and the world. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, but we already had COVID. Oh, monkeypox is easy to control. But no, it's not a virus. It's not a bacteria. But it is a problem that pretty much everyone you know of has faced, but nobody wants to ever talk about. That's the epidemic of mental illness. Yes, like I said, it's not a virus. It's not a bacteria. In fact, there's nothing that can really transmit this from one person to another. No. Mental illness, if you really must get technical, is really nothing more than having a few neurotransmitters more or less in the brain than is considered stable. Or maybe the brain fires in a different pattern than your own. Or maybe everything comes in at once. And yet, nobody really wants to talk about it. And that's kind of disturbing to me. I mean, okay, let's say, for example, the fact that I'm a type 1 diabetic. It means I have to take a shot every time I eat, or else things get really, really bad. It also means I have to be careful and have something to eat in case my blood sugar starts going really, really low. These are things that I have to deal with. But would it make any sense at all for somebody who really has no background in diabetes to come in and tell me that, oh, they don't think I need to take insulin because, oh, it's just something that is in your head. It doesn't make sense, does it? Or let's say that you find a person with a broken leg on the side of the road. Now, would you just walk past? Would you ignore them and thinking that, oh, they just need to get better? No, of course not. You try and help. But nobody wants to discuss mental illness. In those two examples, I gave pretty much the excuses and the sentiments that many who see this thing try to give. And it keeps spreading. It doesn't spread in any visible way. There aren't flow charts and diagrams and anything that shows what particular stage of mental illness you might get into. But yet, it's still there. And it has affected and ended the lives of thousands of people. More especially children, teens, young adults. And yet, at every time when some parent goes in and finds that their child has put a belt around their neck and dangling from the ceiling, or they've taken too many pills, they always say the same thing, that they never saw it coming. And yet, here's the real question. How many of them do you think really sit down and talk about this? How many do you think would say, maybe there's something that we can do? Of course there aren't many, because it's not a comfortable subject. But let's take a look at the history of mental illness. It used to be that even into the 20th century, in the latter years of the 20th century, people who were not like others were sent to institutions and sent to other places, or else they were even given lobotomies. But the lobotomies seemed to help. Well, actually, no, they didn't. That's the reason why lobotomies are no longer useful or used, because they're illegal. That's the reason why the institutions that I'm talking about aren't really in use very much anymore. Yes, there are mental illness hospitals, but for the most part, they are run as a way to keep people from hurting themselves and others while they deal with whatever they're dealing with. I've been inside 2 of them myself, and neither one for more than a week. It is frightening to be somebody who's mentally ill. I can tell you that for sure. But it's also disheartening when people don't want to talk about it. No, they'd rather blame drugs or music or video games or movies. They'd rather have that as the excuse, because it's a good excuse. It's a comfortable excuse. But these things that are addictive, a lot of them may be just used to numb the brain so that they don't have to feel so alone and so segregated from others. You know, although we're still working on it, we have come a long way from those times when we were asked to put different skin colors in different sections of the city bus. We've come a long way from the time when we had different water fountains for different skin colors. You know, we're still working on it, yes. A lot of what's the word? I just lost the word. A lot of these discriminations are being worked on. They are being addressed. But yet, we have people who still need to work on it. Yet, when somebody says, oh, I'm depressed, or oh, I have bipolar, they're automatically pushed to the side. They're automatically said, oh, you can't be with us anymore. That's happened a lot. So, most of the time, people keep silent about it. They suffer in silence when they don't have to. And yet, people still are uncomfortable. They don't want to know. So imagine it when a teenager just doesn't feel normal. I know that happens to a lot of teenagers, but they know that there's something wrong. They know that there is something not right with them. You know, I felt that way a lot myself. And I got treated. But when they go and they try to talk to somebody about it, it's treated as a phase. It's treated as just something that teenagers go through. You know, it's treated like it's nothing. When a teenager says, hey, I'm feeling this way, parents take them out for ice cream or some other wonderful thing like that. And then when this teenager, this hypothetical teenager, doesn't think anybody is willing to help them, they start losing hope. They start thinking, well, maybe they shouldn't be here anymore. So they grab a bunch of pills, or they grab a belt or a rope, or they even wind up their bed sheets because they think that the world doesn't need them. But how many lives would be saved if, instead of pretending like it doesn't exist and hoping it goes away, we learned about it? We sat down and we researched it. We looked it up. And we see that, yes, even though mental illness has been around a long time, a lot of those that we call great were themselves mentally ill. I mean, I can tell you at least a few offhand that were considered great. One comes to mind right away, Robin Williams. He brought mirth and joy to many, many people, and yet he thought that the world had enough of him. There was, Vincent van Gogh, although from what I've seen lately, I don't think he actually meant to hurt himself. I think he was covering for somebody else. But so many great people that we consider great may have just had a mental illness themselves. So why do we still feel so uncomfortable talking about this? Why do we feel so uncomfortable bringing this up? Is it a shame to have mental illness in the family? No, it should never be. I mean, sure, back in the last century, there were places that held people who were mentally ill for long, long periods. These state-run hospitals that would have patients bound together, barely taken care of. Or else they'd use lobotomies and they'd use electroshock therapy. But those days are gone. So too needs to go our fear of mental illness. Now, it won't be an easy let go. But honestly, if we all took the time to really study and learn about this, how many lives would be saved? If somebody had noticed the warning signs of this guy that did the shooting in Texas, if somebody had seen that, something was wrong upstairs in his head, instead of just letting it go, how many lives would be saved there? We'd still have those more than 20 people that he killed. Yet people want to blame guns. They want to blame media. They want to blame video games or music. They don't want to sit back and say, maybe we really need to sit down and talk. Maybe this 14-year-old girl who seems to just be shy in groups actually does this because she doesn't feel like she belongs. And if you get that girl talking, if you get her to say, if you get her to say why she doesn't feel like she belongs, and she gets the help that she needs, then there'll be one less teenager that commits suicide. Now I know it's not a comfortable thing. And I hope that what I'm saying here has made you a little uncomfortable. And I thank you for sticking with me while I'm on this rant. But yeah, it needs to end. The stigma of mental illness needs to end. How many lives can be saved if we took the time to sit down and research the signs of depression, of anxiety, of bipolar? We sit down and we read these things, and then we talk about them, and we come to an understanding. Yeah, mental illness is not an easy subject, and it's very personal. No two people have the same kind. But it can be done. Lives can be saved if we just paid attention. Anyway, that's it.